So I was one of those kids working 40 hours a week on the loading dock at Roadway Express, to pay my tuition, living expenses, and all these other things. So the mission of the Folds of Honor is near and dear to my heart.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mortgage Influencers, where we bring you professionals who share insight into the latest trends, tips, industry technology, and services to help you be a mortgage influencer in your mortgage business.
My name is Ginger Bell. We want to welcome you to this episode of Mortgage Influencers. With me, I have my guest host, Scott Schang. Carl and Frank are in a meeting running late, so they might hop on a little later. But I am so excited for today because this day has been a long time in the works, and it is the release of our VA Home Loan Video Planner. And that's the planner that I co-authored with Marshall Sparkman. So Marshall, I want to thank you first and foremost for your service. I know you are a retired captain in the United States Air Force, so we want to thank you for your service. And then as our guest today, we also have retired Colonel Nick Nichols, who is also the Executive Vice President for Folds of Honor. So Nick, thank you for your service and thank you for joining us today.
So much. We're honored to be here.
Yeah, and then a dear friend of mine, Mr. Eddie Perez, who's the CEO of Equity Prime Mortgage, and a huge supporter in providing funding for the VA home loan on both the retail and the wholesale side, and also a very big supporter of Folds of Honor. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Marshall and I, we're not even sure where we met. We met a while back. And Marshall is a big educator on the VA home loan, does a lot of education, CE courses for real estate agents. And I was wanting someone to really lead in putting together the VA video planner. This is actually the 4th video planner that I've written. And I have always been a big supporter of the VA home loan and really providing education around it because I think it is underutilized. And so, Marshall, why don't you tell a little bit about what you do as far as educating? And I love your story as far as what you did in the military and how that relates to what you're doing for educating.
So I was an aircraft maintenance officer, right? Nick, you were too, right? So, in the Air Force as a maintenance officer, you have from day one, you have a huge scope of responsibility. It's like you get the weight of the world on your shoulders, and with the soldiers and so much to keep the aircraft in the sky, we live and die by checklist. And when I got into the mortgage industry, I realized, hey man, this is like, you want to talk about a checklist, like this is a checklist that we're just waiting to happen. And I kind of implemented, strategic checkpoints along the way to my mortgage process because I wanted everything to be smooth. And when I got in the mortgage industry, I got in 2008 when I got out of active duty, and I quickly learned that loan officers didn't understand VA loans, and my processors didn't understand VA loans, and underwriters didn't understand VA loans. So I being a good soldier, I went home and printed off the VA loan guidelines, and I went home and dorked out in the guidelines, reading them with a highlighter and a pen. And I talked to underwriters that understood it, and I called the VA a lot. And then I realized, people started referring me veterans, and I realized realtors are scared to death to deal with VA loans, even to this day. So I started going around the local military units and talking to as many realtors as I could, just kind of debunking myths of VA loans, telling them how easy they are to close, how they're the easiest loans to close, and they're the veterans don't even understand the VA, the benefits that they have with the VA loans. They don't understand that they can use it more than once. And there's so much education that needs to be done. And, as any good soldier, I just thought, well, I'll start here in my hometown and just do as much education as I can and putting out as much content as I can. And then slowly start to grow it into other areas, which is, it's been an honor being able to work with you, Ginger, taking this vision that I've had for going on 15 years now and making it possible.
Yeah. So I love that. And everything you do as far as your education is really complete. All the steps, it's not just half to where it's like, yeah, that's what you need to do. But I mean, it truly is. That's what I love working with, we put together a guide. That's one of the bonuses you get. And it's like, you put this step by step. And Eddie, I know for you as a lender, having a mortgage broker like Marshall, who is so committed to providing that education, is so important and so critical because it makes it easier for you, right?
Everybody. It's not just that, it's everybody out in the community. I do want to say, first off, before anything, thank you, Nick, and thank you, Marshall, for your service. I think, unfortunately, sometimes people take freedom for granted, and I'm glad for people like you. So I want to say thank you. But to answer the question, it helps everybody. He said it, Marshall said it. It reduces the, I like the word, I'm going to steal it from a myth, because I'd say the honest lie is probably a better term, but it really does debunk the myth. They're actually easier loans to close, believe it or not. They're not harder. I'd actually tell you a 20% down conventional is actually tougher to close, believe it or not, especially with all the repurchase demands that are coming out. And with the VA, their philosophy is pretty sound, that if it's benefiting the veteran, then we should go through with it. That's pretty black and white to me. So I consider it an easier loan. It's just, perception's not reality. I hope that one day that is unlearned by society. Reality's reality.
Right.
And you hit the nail on the head. One of the first sentences, if you print off chapter 4 in the VA guidelines, one of the first sentences tells mortgage companies to find a way to make the deal happen. And then proceeding in that paragraph, it tells underwriters to use sound underwriting discretion, use your own discretion in doing the VA loan. So the VA guidelines are very kind of loosey-goosey. They're not really clear-cut, black and white. It gives the underwriters a lot of discretion to make their own decision. And as Eddie said, number one rule, as long as you're putting the veteran in a better position, number two rule is they have to have the ability to make the payments. So if you're putting them in a better position, they can make the payments. We're going to find a way to make that loan work, period.
Yeah, that's another thing. We say that the VA loan is underutilized. I think I think the hardest part about the VA loan is there are not black and white rules. It is left so much up to interpretation. And we have so many consumers that are online right now, and these online consumers, their options are literally limited to the experience or the effort that the loan officer puts into it. And if you're not putting any effort and you don't have any experience, you're telling veterans, no, you don't deserve your benefit, when they're just too lazy. And on the other side of this, Eddie, you guys are one of the only ones that were following the VA guidelines, the VA guidance out of the CARES Act. Like all of these other lenders were saying, no, you have to go into a repayment plan if you're in forbearance from the CARES Act. But that's not what the VA said, and that's not what the guidance was. And like EPM, you guys stepped up and you said, listen, these are the guidelines. The guidelines are, we use underwriter discretion. We do whatever's best for the veteran. And most mortgage companies won't do that. The biggest VA lenders we think about out there when we think about VA loans, they won't even do manual underwriting. They just say, oh, well, it's not going to be easy. No, you can't do it. So this is a super, super important topic. And I don't think we can ever talk about it enough or ever push this stuff out there enough, because it's not that it's misunderstood. It's that people are lazy or greedy. It's those two things.
Yeah. Can I
Unaware. Well, I mean, but companies are making these decisions from the top down too, and that hurts consumers, because consumers assume if you're on the internet, you know what you're talking about, and it's just not true. So people like you guys going out there and telling the truth and letting people know that there's more to it than that is just so important. It's just, yeah, this is such an important topic.
Speaking directly to loan officers, don't be afraid to do a VA manual underwrite. I mean, the automated underwriting system doesn't like anything under a 640, and I think the stats are like 80-something% of the people getting out of the military make 60-something% less income than they made in the military. You got your average guy getting out right now as an E5 staff sergeant that did a couple years. He did a couple years in the military, and he was making around $100,000 civilian equivalent. Guys, you know as well as I do, how many jobs out there are you going to go in day one making $100,000? It doesn't happen. So a lot of veterans will take hits on their credit. And, the VA actually does not have a minimum credit score requirement. Most people don't understand that. So loan officers, don't be afraid to take a VA loan. If the deal makes sense, do it. EPM, I can't speak highly enough of those guys. They're one of the only lenders that I know of that'll go down to a 500 credit score on a VA loan, as long as the veteran hasn't had any lates within the past 12 months. So, if the deal makes sense, don't be afraid of it. Help these guys out.
And I think helping the guys out is so important. And it all begins with education. And, Nick, Folds of Honor, that's what Folds is all about, is providing that education. And, to the point of, you said, Eddie, unaware. And it's our job to educate. And for what Folds does, as far as providing education to the families of wounded and fallen soldiers. And a lot of them in those families have not had the ability to go to a secondary or higher education until Folds comes along. So I want to take a minute and Nick, have you share a little bit about Folds, because obviously everyone knows it's near and dear to my heart. And I think it's something that's so important to, again, raise awareness, let people know it's out there.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with each and every one of you. And I want to brag on Ginger here too, because we met, golly, Ginger, was that 3 years ago at the, maybe
4 years ago, Nick.
4 years ago.
It was at the launch of the documentary, the Folds of Honor documentary. Yeah.
That's right. I remember we had breakfast the next day and started talking about a campaign. So I just want everybody to know out there that Ginger is a force of nature for the Folds of Honor. She has started a no-to-go campaign and has raised over $70,000 with that campaign. And it's just been absolutely amazing. So Folds of Honor. So we provide educational scholarships to the spouses and kids of military members and actually now first responders and those members who have either been killed or disabled. Okay. And right now we have 9,000 spouses and kids in school. That's about $40 million that we're putting out into the educational system, which is incredible. And, the gift of education is really neat because it's the concept of, teaching people to fish, right? Giving them that opportunity. And this is not a handout, it's a hand up. Okay. I spent 30 years in, I was an F-16 pilot, 7 combat tours, all the things. And not only that, but I'm also a Gold Star kid. So I'm a 3rd generation fighter pilot. I lost my dad when I was 15 years old. So I was one of those kids working 40 hours a week on a loading dock at Roadway Express, to pay my tuition, living expenses, and all these other things. So the mission of the Folds of Honor is near and dear to my heart. But I think there's even a bigger picture here. And I think somebody mentioned that earlier. Since 2020 at the height of COVID, then obviously a lot of political tension in the US for a lot of time. When we look at the Folds of Honor, this is something I think as Americans, we can collectively come behind. It's not a red issue. It's not a blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue. And looking at that, I think all of us can agree, and everybody in the audience can agree, that if you love your freedom and you love your safety, that we are morally bound to make sure that we take care of the families of those that provide that for us, right? I know it was a significantly big deal for me. When I left for combat, the one thing that was always on my mind was making sure if I didn't come home, my family was taken care of, right? And I had the resources to do that. Sometimes, as an officer, you make more money, you probably have a little bit more financial planning and stuff like that. And a lot of our younger troops don't. A lot of our younger, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, they may have not, been mentored in that area, have that opportunity. And so I love that the Folds of Honor can stand in the gap and go, yes, your kid can go to college. Yes, your kid can go to a trade school, a technical school, whatever it might be. And giving that gift and the blessing on our end is being able to wake up each and every day knowing that you're helping deserving people and doing something good for America and making everything better. And, let's flood the airways with positivity.
I love it. Yeah, so true. And, I think we can do a follow-up, honestly, Nick, to really have you on and talk about some of the education and how that helps. And would love to be able to do that. But getting back to the education and how this all ties in is the VA video planner is really the planner that we put together. It's one idea, one prompt every week for you to go out and make a video that talks about the VA home loan, that can help to educate consumers, to change that unawareness Eddie talked about, and to be able to make a video about that. But there's telling a story. Scott, you're such a great storyteller, and so many of the videos that you do at Find My Way Home is really about stories and helping consumers. And so what that looks like. And Marshall, the families that you're able to help. And so if you're watching this, if you're watching a recording of it, if you're watching it live, you can make a difference and help to educate about the VA home loan, to educate and to find out more about Folds of Honor. So if you go to VA Video Planner, so vavideoplanner.com, you can find out the information, you can get it on Amazon. Marshall and I committed all of the proceeds for the sales of the VA Video Planner is going to Folds of Honor. So next, straight up, that's where we are. When we set out and I started the Know to Go, it's a virtual chapter that's dedicated just to the mortgage and real estate industry. And that's one of the things, Nick, you and I talked about 4 years ago. I was like, hey, how about if we do a virtual chapter? Our industry serves veterans through the VA home loan, and COVID really threw that down that path to where it's like, hey, let's give it a try. And so we've been able to do that with the support of people like Eddie to help us to really launch it and to get it going. And so when we started it, my goal was 100,000. So I think you said we're at like 70,000. So we got a little bit of ways to go. So, so if you're watching this and you want to support Folds of Honor, you can go to VA Video Planner. I've got all the links in there. But what I want to talk about, we've got a few minutes left, is really some of the ways that you can educate not just consumers, but Marshall, also real estate agents, because there's a lot of myths and misconceptions around that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I teach a class monthly to my local realtors. Well, I say local, I try to, you don't want to hit them the same thing over and over again. So I go to a different part of the state. I try to hit each part of the state once a year, sometimes twice a year, depending on the size. If it's in Nashville, I may have a class twice, 2 or 3 times a year, just to make sure I cover everybody. Also, I go out to the local real estate associations and I tell them, hey, I offer this class, it's free CE credit for your real estate agents. They seem to love that. What I didn't realize is nobody offers free CE classes to the real estate associations. All the instructors want to charge them money. So they really like that. Also, you can reach out to all the local broker, managing brokers of all the real estate companies in your area. They got to have people constantly coming in. And so they like butts and seats in their class as well. And it's another good topic for you to be able to educate. So educating the realtors is the easy part. I think it's the right thing to do. Usually they're the boots on the ground and they're the first one that a lot of the clients are coming to. And I noticed somebody popped a question, kind of the same line. Greg Hickman said, he can't get on the bases, although he's a veteran, he can't get on the bases to be able to give presentations to the local military guys. And that is a challenge. I usually approach the local military bases with, I'm giving them financial literacy, which they seem to like that because, the military doesn't really give much of, or they didn't when I was in, they didn't give financial classes and teaching. So especially if you're in the Guard or Reserve units in your local area, it's really easy to get into those guys and be able to teach a class. So I would, I've actually, to help you with that as well, our next book, our next series that's coming out is going to be the VA loan guide. And it's more of a, I don't have a copy here in front of me, I should have, but it's more of a tangible resource that you can take in or mail to these military commanders, say, hey, we've got a book here. I'd like to be able to come in and teach your soldiers this. Or hey, broker manager, we'd like to come in and teach your realtors this. So be on the lookout for that. That's kind of the next part of the series.
Yeah, I think we're going to get that in the next couple of months too. It's like Britton, I know you want to add some more to it. But so let's talk about that, because I kind of want to unpack that. Great question to Gregory Hickman, and thank you for your service also. I had a client who unfortunately is no longer with us, but he did a lot of education at the associations. So like it was, I think, the California Enlisted Association, like for the National Guard. And they would have annual conferences and things like that would be going on. So, I think you could even, reach out to that. And Nick, you probably have a lot of you think about the companies that support Folds of Honor. I'm sure that they would love to have someone come in and teach a class to their employees who are retired military, or, if they're active service, or if they're in the National Guard, or even because Folds, you have expanded now to first responders to come in and teach a class about the VA home loan. A lot of companies, they want to get, Eddie, you think about it, you want people to be able to move into Atlanta, right? Into the areas that you serve. So what better way than
All of America.
All of America, yeah.
All 50 states, all of America. Anywhere, as long as it's America.
From sea to shining sea.
To Puerto Rico, I'll throw that in there, even though that's part of America, but unofficially.
Yeah, I'm going there in 2 weeks. Puerto Rico, yeah. But you think about having a company, to bring someone in like Marshall, to be able to educate on the VA home loan, to be able to get people to be a homeowner. Because if you own a company and you want people to move into an area, it's like Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin has an aerospace division that's in Atlanta, and huge company that hires military, right? And so I would, look at companies. Gregory, if you want to talk about places to get into, I would get into some companies, get into some organizations. Nick, what do you think?
No, it's a great idea. And, one of the things that was very challenging, especially towards the end of my career when I was a commander, is actually helping our airmen understand what their benefits were, right? It seemed like for the airmen, like the VA home loan process and stuff, there may have been some misunderstandings with it, but typically we could get them connected. We had a really good network of lenders that we know. In fact, ironically enough, here in about 2 days, I'm actually sitting in my brand new home right now, and I'll be closing on a VA loan here, hopefully Friday. We're just waiting on a couple of pieces of paper, and it is a super easy process. And if you're a veteran out there listening right now and you have a disability rating, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Marshall, but they don't pay the funding fee, correct? Yep. You just have to have a minimum 10% VA disability rating, super easy to get the paperwork and all that stuff. But I think a lot of times that in the military, I was convicted as a commander because I don't think that we did a very good job of educating our airmen on exactly what the benefits were out there. And as somebody who has navigated the VA disability process, that was extraordinarily difficult and not intuitive. So, but we were able to overcome on the mortgage side by finding some folks that were really, really good lenders that really understood the VA process and would go the extra mile to help our folks. But yeah, getting into companies and help them understand to attract veterans to their companies and to attract veterans into their community, just going, hey, we have set up a process for you guys and we can help you get a home, would be amazing.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, Scott, I see you pondering questions.
Well, just a couple of things here. Our audience here is mostly loan officers. By creating content, it's you can also remind consumers that it's not just A, B, or C, and you qualify, and all loan officers are going to know that. The loan officer, the best VA loan officer isn't the one that knows everything, because you'll never will. It's the one that's passionate enough about helping the veteran that you will figure out a way to make it work. It doesn't mean it works 100% of the time, but you can't just look at the yes or no that pops out of the automated underwriting system. And, not everybody maybe in our audience here has the the benefit of being a broker and being able to work with somebody like EPM and Eddie. And so I just encourage you, if you're listening out there and you want to do VA, don't be afraid to educate your underwriters. I had to do that a lot when I was originating. Marshall, you find that too? Have you ever found that you have to really sometimes
You know
sit
what's
down
funny
and-
is I've got underwriters that I worked with at
Yeah.
previous companies that call me. I get a
Yes.
call. I love it when they call me too. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I get calls all the time from underwriters who will ask, hey, what do you think about this? Even the lady that taught me, Miss Molly Jower, she's been underwriting VA loans for so long. Her underwriting number began with a 0. Her VA underwriting number. So, but Miss Molly, I just cherish the time that I spent with her, and I sat in the office right next to her, and I would spend hours talking and picking her brain about stuff. And you know, she called me recently. She was like, "Hey, let me run this one by you," and it's all because the VA wants you to find a way to make this deal work. I mean, at the end of the day,
Yes.
and if the veteran borrower were to foreclose for whatever reason, the VA is going to come back to the lender. Eddie can probably expand on this more, but they're going to come back to the lender and say, they're going to say, okay, why did you give this guy a loan? Instead of a conventional loan with PMI or an FHA loan, they're coming back making sure that you checked all the boxes. The VA, it's going to be a little more intensive on why did you give this person a loan. As long as you can document that you put the veteran in a better position and that they have the ability to repay it, you're probably going to be okay taking a risk on it.
The one other thing I wanted to build onto what you were saying, Ginger, and I'd never thought about this, and this is why you're so brilliant. You don't have to go to a place like Lockheed Martin. There are a lot of companies on the internet that are veteran owned and veteran friendly. You can do a Google search for veteran owned businesses. And regardless of what business they're in, they probably do business with veterans. So you may be able to create some sort of partnership and work through them and help educate their clientele as well. That's just really, that's so smart at taking that angle. But no, I will keep my comments to a minimum because this is an all-star panel.
I know we're coming up on the time, and one of the things I really want to do is to be able to, first of all, if you're a mortgage broker and you are not signed up with EPM Wholesale, you need to get signed up with EPM Wholesale, because I have honestly worked in wholesale in my life. That's how I started into this industry some 20 years ago. So I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of different wholesale companies, and Eddie, you do it right. And what you guys do for the veterans and everything.
I would say me, but I understand.
Your team does it right. You know, Carrie's phenomenal. Obviously, Laura's phenomenal. I mean, everyone you have. But I mean, but it hits with you. I mean, it's leadership, man. I mean, it's
No. I'm and somebody said it earlier. I think one of the other things that got to get unlearned in this world is that top down philosophy. I believe it's more of a bottom up type philosophy, and you have to set the tone, because with your leadership goes everything.
Yeah.
And that's why I raised my hand. I was going to say, you know, it doesn't matter if you don't do wholesale with us, or if even you're a retail originator out there. You know, my head of underwriting, Phil Brousseau, puts his cell phone out all the time on LinkedIn to call him. Joe Davis, one of our underwriters, we're more than happy to help out anything, because at the end of the day, we may not be getting the loan, but a veteran is. And I've always been very consumer centric, because I do believe your only competitor in life is yourself. So I've never viewed somebody else as a competitor. I view it as the competition. And I think that's good, because I've never seen anybody that didn't grow without competition. So we're more than happy to give the guidelines and just discuss what we see, because I think that's just the right thing to do. And I'm not worried about, and I'm not using this as a dressed up rehearsal either of, hey, let me get your loans later. If you want to do business with us, great. If not, great. But if you're doing something for the veteran or any consumer, fabulous.
Yep. Well said. That's why I love you, man.
That's why
And
I love you.
one of the questions we get, so we are getting a question as far as, can you provide full contact information for Eddie and EPM, where to reach out and get signed up? I know you have a wholesale registration, Eddie. I do have a link. So on our vavideoplanner.com website, I have links to Eddie's company. I have links to Folds of Honor. I have links to Marshall. I have links to Find My Way Home. Scott, I don't know if you have a division that's just for the VA. Do you have a section like that on Find My Way Home?
I don't have a specific section, but my VA, my manual underwriting videos by far have always get the most videos. and or always get the most views and the most comments. And it's mostly because internet veteran companies can't tell them no, and they go back online and they end up finding somebody. So I can't encourage people enough to get this video guide, start doing the video, start telling stories about all of the loans that you've closed for veterans, and just keep putting that information out there, because these veterans, they're either being misinformed, or the loan officer, they can't do it. They have overlays. They're going back online. They're looking for somebody that understands the program. If you're not out there educating those consumers, then they're just left to the sharks. So we have a responsibility to get that education out there. So I just appreciate everything that you guys are doing. This is such a great step to help raising the bar and raising our game and helping educate more veterans and professionals.
Real quick, first of all, I appreciate that. I put it on there. My handle on all of social media, it's pretty convenient, is Eddie, but it's spelled with a Y. I got to be very clear on that. G Perez Jr. You can find me on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. It's all the same. I'm fortunate that my name is a little bit unique, so I could do that. And I threw in the chat my cell phone. I just always say very kindly, break in case of emergency. Don't call me directly, just first. Feel free to text me first, because I'll be honest, I get so many marketing calls on my cell. It's right here. I've already gotten 3. Text me first to let me know who you are, so I will answer and enter in your information. That way I know that. I'm more than happy to always talk. Like I said, I was an originator myself. I know the journey. I was a broker. I've even underwritten some loans. Outside of disclosing a loan on my own, I've done a lot, and I don't mind sharing that, because in the end, I'm very consumer centric. I do believe in making sure that consumers are lifted up. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I'm going to close this out because we are at our time. We like to keep it 30 minutes, but I want to, again, thank you for your service, Nick, Marshall, for those of you who are watching. Thank you for our service. We would not have all that we have today if you did not give of yourself and your time and your family's time as well. So thank you for that. And for those of you who are watching, go make a video. Go make a video, let consumers know this is available. It's one of the greatest benefits that they have that they can utilize and to get into to more homes. So Marshall, thank you. I've absolutely enjoyed our journey. We're not done. Marshall's got a whole lot more stuff coming out. This guy's a great educator, Eddie. You guys totally need to get connected with him.
Oh yeah, no, give him. I threw it out there. Make sure to give him all my contact. I'm more than always happy to talk.
Yeah, and he's close. He's just next door in Nashville, so he's not too.
Yeah, 3.5 hours around the car.
Sure, hop, skip, and a jump. And Nick, always thank you so much. Love everything that you do. Totally appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you again. I need to make a trip out there and see your new headquarters. And Scott, always my friend, my partner in crime. I appreciate it. And so make sure you hop on. Next week, we have a special guest who Scott has invited on. And so Rick will be on with us, Scott, and you're going to be able to share some of the great things that he's doing to be a mortgage influencer. So thanks, guys. Go out and make a video. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Be well. Thank you, everybody.